A very warm hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we will talk about the price and the effect of discounting. The key learning point is to be able to understand and evaluate the impact of discounting on the bottom line. So what happens when we discount prices? How does it affect financial performance of the company? And I would say this is an absolutely essential skill that every person in marketing, in fact, every person in business should know and understand. I do like making my videos as interactive as possible, and here I would like to propose you a few scenarios. I call them challenges, and see if you can get this right. This will help understand the impact of discounting. So, the first challenge. Suppose a company with 8% profit margins increases price by 1%, assuming steady sales. They will boost profits by how much? So please, can you pause me for a moment? Try to work out your answer to this mathematical equation if you like, and then continue listening. Now, if you're not sure what profit margins are and you just wanted a quick reminder, here it is. Investopedia has provided this very helpful illustration as well as a definition. Profit margin is a measure of company's profitability, and profit margin is usually expressed as a percentage. This is a percentage of revenue that the company keeps as a profit. So you can see, if you see that pie, you take that piece of the pie, and this is the percentage that you keep, right? Because the rest you pay through the costs, through variable costs, labor costs, fixed costs, and all of that. So basically, profit margin is that percentage of the total price that you keep. You now through the answer. Okay, so suppose you are selling a pair of jeans and the price for consumers is £100. Now your margin, or the profit margin, which we now have established sits in the price, it is £8, okay, which is 8%. Now your cost will be then £92. Now suppose you are increasing prices by 1%, so your new price becomes £101, which is £100 plus 1%. Now the cost remains the same, £92. Your margin has now increased to £9. So how do we calculate the percentage increase in profit? So suppose 8% of the margin was your 100% of the profit. That was all the total profit you had. Now this margin increases to 9%. So X, the measure we're trying to find, will be this new profit. So X equals 9 times 100% divided by 8 is 112.5%. Now this new profit becomes 112.5%. And if we now deduct the 100% profit we had before, now the answer is 12.5%. So what does this mean? It means that 1% increase in price when, say, a pair of jeans cost £100 will boost your profit by 12.5%. This is a really interesting example because if you remember, or you may not know this case, Continental Airlines in 2001, they had 44 million customers. Average ticket price was $193. Charging $2 more, or 1.4%, would have transformed a loss to a profit. So you can see the power of this, something that would look like a very small increase in price, and you can see the impact it has on the financial performance. Well, I hope this all makes sense, but let me give you another challenge or another scenario to make sure that we really understand this concept. So suppose you are expecting a profit margin of 20% and you are dropping prices by 10%. The question is, how much more will you have to sell in order to stay still, to keep that same 20% of the profit margin? Again, I suggest that you stop, pause me for a moment, draft your answer, and then continue listening. Okay, so now what is the answer? Again, let me guide you through the steps. So the profit margin is 20% and the discount applied is 10%. Now, suppose the price for the pair of jeans was £100, the same. Now, your cost is £80 because your margin is £20. So now, if you look at the new price will be £90. Why? Because you have dropped the prices by 10%. 10% off £100 will be £90. So your new margin is now 10% because the cost remained the same, £80, right? So 10%, your profit becomes now 100%. In other words, your total profit. Okay, so with 10% margin, you did 100% sales volume. Now, 20% margin will be unknown sales volume, X. This is what we're trying to estimate. So X equals 20 times 100 divided by 10 equals 200. So basically with the 20, in order to keep 20% margin, you now have to sell 200%. So you have to increase your sales volume by 200 minus 100 equals 100%. What it means, you need to double your sales in order to keep that same gross margin of 20%. So for consumers, 10% may not seem as enticing or as attractive. However, in terms of the impact on your bottom line, this will reduce your gross margin by half, right? Because instead of getting 20% margin, which was £20 out of every pair of jeans, you're now only getting 10. So you have to sell double amount of those jeans in order to get back to the same profit margin that you had. And one more challenge, let's try again. You expect a profit margin of 20% and you're dropping prices by 12%. How much more will you have to sell to stay still? Again, if you wanted to make most of my videos, I would suggest that you pause me for a moment, draft your answer, and then continue listening. Again, walk you through the answer. So your profit margin is 20%. You have applied discount 12%. So your profit margin is 20%. The price of the jeans remains the same, £100 per pair. Cost remains the same, £80, and margin is £20. Now, when you are discounting by 12%, your new price becomes £88. Why? Because you dropped 12% of 100%, and 100% was £100 per pair of jeans. So your new margin becomes now 8% only. That's what you are left with, because those 12% that you discount, they eat away from your profit. Your cost did not change. So now, how do we find out how much more you need to sell in order to stay still? So 8%, your new margin, is derived from 100% of the sales volume. Now, in order for you to kind of get those 20% in your profit margin, how much should you do in sales? So X equals 20 times 100 divided by 8 equals 250. So to get 20% of the gross margin, your sales volume would have to be 250%, which is 250 minus 100 equals 100%, 150% more. So that's how much more you need to sell in order to stay still. In other words, you have to now do your sales times 2.5, because one pair of jeans only gives you £8. Now, if you sell 2.5 pairs of jeans, 8 times 2.5, will be £20. So you have to sell 2.5 times more in order to get back to the original figure, which was 20% profit. And here I would like to show you something that I believe is extremely valuable, the effect of discounts. So this is drawn from simple Excel calculations, and you can do it yourself. So on the top right, you can see profit margin examples, 20% to 40%. And on the left side, going towards the bottom, you can see discount applied from 1% to 12%. So if you apply a discount of 10% and your profit margin is 20%, how much should you increase in sales volume in order to maintain your return or profit? And the answer is 100%, right? So again, think about the jeans example. A pair of jeans cost £100. Your profit margin was 20%. You apply discount 10%. So those 10% eat away from your profit margin. By selling one pair of jeans, you have now reduced your profit margin from 20% to 10%. So yes, you do need to sell another pair of jeans in order to get those £20, okay? And that's why you have to increase your sales volume by 100%. So now you have to sell 200% of the sales volume. Now, if your discount applied is 12% and your profit margin is 20%, then you will have to increase your sales volume by 150%. In other words, now you have to sell 250%. I hope this all makes sense and goes a long way in explaining why we as marketeers should never or should very rarely think about discounting. Let's try and build our superior or differential advantage by doing all other things. And if nothing works, then we can turn to discounting. But the lesson here is this: avoid discounting if you can at any cost, because it has a very strong financial impact on your performance. That is why we should try and build advantage using other means. Thank you very much for watching and hope you found value in this.